Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. A Batangas lawmaker is bent on fighting corruption as well as ensuring the judicious use of the country's resources. This neophyte congressman calls for transparency and wants to leave no room for kickbacks in government projects, particularly in the Department of Public Works and Highways. Let's get on point with Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste. Congressman, good to have you again. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time. All right, let's start. You wrote an open letter to DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon, basically asking him if you were recommending that the cost of DPWH projects be slashed by 25%. And you talked about DUPA, or the Detailed Unit Price Analysis, and the ABC, the Approved Budget Contract. Tell us more about this.
The DPWH sets the prices that we have recognized are too high. And the easiest way I think that we can stop kickbacks in 2026 is that we lower all the prices of DPWH projects. There's around 600 billion pesos of new projects that are proposed for 2026, 25% of which is 150 billion pesos. There's also over 1 trillion pesos in 2025, 25% of which is 250 billion pesos. And without reducing the number of projects, I think the country can save 400 billion pesos if the DPWH just makes a decision to slash all the project prices.
Let's do that again. You said that in 2026, there's 600 billion pesos worth of, are these flood control?
No, they removed 255 billion pesos of flood control projects. The majority of the budget is road construction or maintenance.
Okay.
And while flood control is very controversial now, supposedly the kickback on road projects can be just as high. And I know this from my own experience because as a new congressman, a lot of contractors actually introduce themselves, and the system, it appears, is that the contractors can pick who is the congressman can pick who is the contractor, and embedded in the budget for a road project is a, let's say, 20-25% kickback for the congressman that picks them.
But you know, actually, when you go back and look at the review, the privileged speech rather, of then Senate Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman Panfilo Lacson, and even if you interviews in the past with Mayor Benji Magalong, they're saying that it's not just a 25 to 30% kickback, right? Ang sinasabi nga nila, what is left of a 100% budget is really 30% for the project.
That's a very good point. The whole system has corruption at many levels. The District Engineering Office has both a Bids and Awards Committee that allegedly also gets a few percentage points commission. The engineers that sign on the work accomplishment for every progress billing of a project supposedly also have some percentage of it. And if there's others involved in the allocation of funds for that project, then it's not only the district representative. And that's why when you have an ecosystem of systemic corruption, then there's so much inefficiency, so much leakage that less than 50% of a contract price actually goes into a project. And if we start off by cutting the top line price of a project, then I think that will deter the corruption. But of course, there has to be more follow-through in also ensuring that the projects are not substandardly built.
So it's almost as if the recommendation is to start slashing these projects by 25%, but that's just the beginning.
I think if you compare the cost of DPWH projects with local government projects, they are around 20 to 30% higher.
Okay.
But even then, they're also 50% higher than private sector projects. So I agree with you that it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think that the bigger problem is how to ensure that the quality is also good. And apart from slashing the cost, you also have to come up with ways to make sure that there's no bid rigging whatsoever, and there's no collusion by the engineers on accepting substandard work.
Correct. What about congressional district allocations? Was this discussed while you are talking about the budget now?
I think there's a lot of fascination by the public now on proponents for projects in congressional insertions. And what the public doesn't seem to see as much is that even the national expenditure program submitted by DPWH as a government agency is full of what the Senate hearings have revealed as political lobbyist projects, as well as even contractor-sponsored projects. The revelation is that sometimes projects are even paid just to get into the national expenditure program, which just shows that who's going to pay for a project to be inserted into the budget if they're not going to get a kickback out of it. It's so hard to clamp down on the corruption throughout the entire system, but I can see that one immediate way that we can do it is by slashing the price, which I should also mention was done in the time of DPWH Secretary Babe Sing Son.
I see.
At that time, they lowered it by 10%. And what happened was that the commissions that politicians supposedly were receiving under his time also lowered by 10%. Now, I believe it's also been reported that the situation has gotten worse since then, which is why I think 25% is the right number to start with now.
I wanted to focus on that. Was there any study that you looked into that will actually tell us that a 100 million peso project can actually be implemented, constructed by a cost of 75 million pesos, less 25%, and we're looking at a project that is within or above standard, not substandard projects? Would that be the correct amount?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In my own district, I have seen an asphalt overlay proposal for 2026 at 101 million pesos per kilometer, when I was told that the local government unit standard price is 50 million pesos per kilometer for a 4-lane highway, and I believe a private sector project would be even less.
Wow.
So it's not even just 25% that you can slash, it's 50% if
Right.
you go by that example.
I think it was was that part of your open letter too? I read that you were saying this. Our former district engineer even sent my staff lists of asphalt overlay projects. So this is obviously over and beyond the flood control projects that he said a contractor would help insert into the budget in the time of Secretary Bonoan, one of which was approved by DPWH as allocable project, and remains in the 2026 budget. It's still there.
Yes.
At a price of 101.5 million per kilometer, perhaps even more overpriced than a flood control project. Tell us more about this too.
First of all, the public doesn't know so much that a district congressman has a certain allocable budget, and the other, let's say, third or half of the DPWH budget is a non-allocable budget, which in the Senate hearings, Secretary Bonoan had admitted comprised of a leadership fund. And the proponents of a project in this system supposedly get to pick the contractors which the district engineering offices award them to. Now, the asphalt overlay project that was proposed in my district was by a Viber message that was sent by the DPWH engineer, proposed by a contractor, and according to the Senate hearings, payments are even made just for projects to be inserted into the budget by contractors. Asphalt overlays are supposedly one of the most lucrative types of projects, even perhaps more so than flood control projects, because if a flood control project breaks, then there's a lot of consequences to the contractor, compared to if a road cracks,
Butas
then
lang siya.
maybe they can get away with it more easily. So the fact that the public is focused on the flood control is a good start, but the whole remaining 600 billion pesos of projects in the 2026 budget still have the same room for cost cutting, and the flood control projects are only the tip of the iceberg.
And I would completely agree with you. While we are focused on the flood control projects, because definitely government, ICI, has to start with something, and that is definitely what the president had started. We're looking at asphalt overlay. That is, I'm sure a lot of people have been suffering and have been angered over these asphalt overlays that after 1 week it starts raining again, butas na naman siya. Kasi kailangan talaga mabutas para gawin nila ulit, para may budget sila ulit at gawin ulit, dahil that's how basically you corrupt the system and you gain money from that. Yun eh. Mas madaling masira, mas okay para sa kanila kasi uulitin nila. Basically, that's what they're going to do. The allocable budget that you were talking about, how much is it per congressional district?
Actually, there's a lot of mystery on how it's computed. In my district, I have around 1.5 billion, and I have some extra.
What? 1.5 billion.
Well, actually, I have 1.4 billion allocable, and I've also been given a few hundred million of extra on top of that. And I think it'll be good for congressmen to be transparent about how the system works, so that the public is also aware that the budget is not really made by engineers. It's made by politicians along with officials of DPWH and contractors lobbying on the side, and that it's because it's been seen as a money-making opportunity by others. And if we have more of a formula in allocating budgets, instead of making it based on palakasan, so to speak, then I think that would also stamp down on corruption. But on top of what is allocable, or the basic budget for a congressional district, there is the extra that is to the discretion of people
the
sa
speaker,
itaas, including even in
the
DPWH.
executive. Okay.
I would want to emphasize that it's not really Congress that is
Okay.
pulling the strings for all of this, as much as the DPWH system. Because, to use the example of the messages I got from a district engineer, there's people within the DPWH that allegedly sell project allocations to contractors. And this is done from the project planning down to the district engineering
Okay.
offices who will cooperate in awarding those
Right,
contracts to contractors. One thing that I think has not
Sindikato
been
talaga.
given enough public attention is the claim by former Undersecretary Bernardo
Right.
that almost 100% of projects in DPWH are rigged.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, then why aren't we lowering the prices of these projects?
The question then there, Congressman, is when do you actually pass the budget of the DPWH? At what stage are you in right now?
Tomorrow is the period of amendments and approval on second reading. And on Monday is the approval on third reading, after which it goes to the Senate, and then after which there will have to be a bicameral conference committee. The lowering of the price begins with the DPWH because they are the engineers that compute the project budgets.
Yeah.
So I hope that the DPWH secretary will, by a stroke of a pen, lower prices across the board. And if the DPWH doesn't take the initiative, then I hope that one chamber of Congress will. Because after all of the revelations that, as you said, only 30% of a contract price goes into a project, how can we do nothing about the cost of projects that are not flood control in the 2026 budget?
Is it not possible for Congress to actually slash that budget and move it somewhere else?
They already removed flood control projects
Yeah.
from the budget, but I agree with you that we can lower the price of the line items for the non-flood control projects as well. There's a lot of preoccupation on insertions, which are basically what projects are being included. But the other part of the equation is what is the price of those projects.
Right.
If we slash the prices of the projects, no one's going to pay commissions to get those projects anymore.
All right. We're going to take a very short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So we were talking off the air. If the 25% reduction seems just about right, was there any talk with the Secretary Vince about reducing the project cost?
I raised this in our September 17 budget hearing, and Secretary Dizon agreed that we can lower it by 10% because this is what Secretary Singson did in his time. But Secretary Singson also said that you can lower it by 20 or even more percent, and I think that's when you're really cutting into the muscle of what the livelihood of some of the people who are benefiting from these projects is. But I think if we're going to reduce it by 10%, we should go all the way and reduce it by 25%, and that it's really within the DPWH's power
Yeah.
to lower these prices.
To do this. What if it doesn't happen? What if it's not lowered by 25%?
Then it's tantamount to accepting that there are kickbacks in the 2026 budget.
At tanggapin na natin yon, parang ganon.
I will keep on raising this issue, and until the budget is signed, then there's always hope that it can still be changed. But I think that first it starts with the DPWH, and then Congress, and then the Senate, and then the BICAM. And that I think if the public is more aware that we are basically accepting that there are going to be kickbacks in 2026 if we do not lower these project prices, then hopefully all of the public attention that is focused on ending past corruption in the DPWH can be directed to preventing future corruption in the 2026 budget.
Just a very quick question on the same topic, because when you talk about corruption, you already filed a complaint against a district engineer in the first district of Batangas, first district, engineering district, for bribery regarding a 3.1 million pesos bribe that he allegedly offered you. We talked about that. We had you at that time, which he vehemently denied. Any update on this?
Well, his response was that it was a donation and had no strings attached. And I think that's what contractors will say is the nature of giving cash to politicians around the country. It's a welcome gift, a courtesy out of friendship. And if we don't do something about these incidents, then it will continue to be systemic. I think he didn't even deny that a contractor gave the money, that this is a standard operating procedure, but they're just saying that there's no strings attached in terms of a contractor getting projects if they're giving money to politicians.
Yeah.
And I think that since then, so much more has come out in the whole country about the corruption being not just in isolated cases, but in other districts of the country. And even in my own district, I've seen so much about how projects are not only substandardly built, but also overpriced. And many of the former members of the District Engineering Office of DPWH in my district have also been telling me that basically on every project, kickbacks like the ones that we're talking about in this interview have been given in exchange for contracts being awarded.
And because you, filed a case against District Engineer Abelardo Calalo, that is his name, right? How has it been in the first district of Batangas in terms of, because we're not just talking about flood control projects here. Meron tayong horizontal, meron din tayong vertical.
Yes. I would say that the contractors are now afraid to do anything illegal because, number one, we're investigating the substandard quality of all the projects, and it appears that the vast majority, I would venture to say almost all projects have some corners that are cut, as was also testified by other district engineers in other Senate hearings. And the test will be if the prices will indeed go down when the new projects are bid without any kickbacks. And that's one reason actually why I'm coming on your show and advocating for no kickbacks in 2026, because I know for a fact that this is systemic, at least in what I've seen in my own district. Even if a congressman doesn't engage in this, it's already embedded in the costs, and that cut could go to someone else. Yeah. So why allow this?
It's not going to go to you.
Yes,
it's going to go to someone else.
Right. So why are we going to just allow that from happening? Why don't we lower that price in the budget and give it to new projects that can benefit the people?
Let's see what will happen tomorrow. Again, tomorrow is the period of amendments, and then on Monday, the budget will be supposed to be passed in third reading. Let's see what happens, and we wish to have you again for a longer period. Congressman Leandro Leviste, thank you so much for your time, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.